Welcome, friends and family. It is that time again, and this is blog 10, dated 1st of the 5th, 2022. Oh my God, 10 weeks. I hope you're all enjoying this. This one is not going to be quite as prepared as the others. I've had some more news, but we'll try and keep the same format, shall we? So we'll get past the news really quickly because it is not interesting this week at all. The war. So there is an injured Briton captured by the Russian troops, and he is being paraded on TV. He was found in the same district as Scott Sibley. Now, he was a British veteran killed on Thursday in exactly the same district. Now, this was big news because it involves Britain citizens. Other than that, the war is just continuing, and we all know our thoughts on the war. Next, a bit more personal, MPs. Neil Parish, an MP, he is under investigation for watching porn at work, has stated he may have opened a link on his phone by mistake. Neil, you should be working. You're a civil servant, a little bit like me. We all pass our civil servant exam. We all have every year a 2-hour course that we have to go through and an exam at the end in regards to security. Don't try and fool the British public. You didn't open any link by mistake. Good God. And anybody who would have done would have seen that it would have been open for a second. You'd have seen what it is and stopped it. I hope that investigation opens up all sorts of things for you, because I don't feel sorry for you one bit. Boris Becker, he's been jailed for 2.5 years for hiding 2.5 million worth of assets to avoid paying debts. What would my father say about that? If you've got a debt, you've got to pay it off. He would probably feel a bit sorry for him, because those assets would probably be trophies and memorabilia of when he played tennis. But you've got a debt, pay it. Bit nasty that for me, really. And the last one, noise cameras. So there is a test of new cameras that will also measure noise, and they will be trialled in 4 areas of England. The legal noise level is 74 decibels, which is around about the same level as you flushing a lavatory. Probably a good thing, this. We've got cars that go past our house, and I'm pretty sure, and I'm not going to be ageist about this, that a couple of youngsters have got flanges and all sorts of things in their exhaust just so they can make a bloody noise while they're travelling down my street, and at my street at above the speed limit. I don't like that at all. I do know it sounds really good to sound like an F1 car, but F1 cars don't sound like that anymore either. So grow up. And that's the news. Now, I got that out of the way as fast as possible because I don't know. I'm in a weird feeling at the moment. I think my brain is okay, but my emotions are up and down, and that's probably because of things that have happened this week. It started off bad. On Monday I went for a pre-op exam, and a pre-op exam is to see whether I'm healthy enough to have the operation, and it's just on my knee, and as they explained, you'd probably be under for about 10 minutes and then you'd be up. But during the pre-op exam they measured my blood pressure, took some bloods, did an ECG, and they have a gauge, 1 being you're very healthy, 8 being you're not operable, your health is not good enough, and the number she gave me at the end was 7. So my blood pressure is sky high, and as I explained to them, I'm going through an appeal tribunal at work, and I've tried to keep my blood pressure down by doing walking, which I've been doing for years, and trying to keep my brain occupied so that I'm not constantly thinking of it, and it shows that it's not working too much at the moment. Even this was supposed to try and help. Sleep deprivation is going to be part of it, and obviously diet. I'm not sleeping very well, but I haven't been sleeping very well since the pandemic. The pandemic because of exhaustion, and the second one because of all the things that are going on in my mind at the moment. Part of that emotion. So that's not good. So I might have to go to sleep classes. There was lots of other things that were discussed. But I came away from there knowing that I've now got to give free blood pressure checks on 3 independent days. Had to get a blood pressure monitor. So I bought this X4 because I've had blood pressure monitors before, and the cuff that they use, if they use those metal bars that go inside there to attach it to your arm, they dig into your arm, something chronic, they hurt. And the only way that you can get a nice one is if you spend more money. So again, I've got no money, and I had to buy that. And the lady that was at the hospital told me that my GP surgery would rent them out or lend them to me. That was a lie. They don't at all. I phoned the doctor's surgery, was in a queue for 45 minutes to be told we don't do that, and that I should try the pharmacist, which is built into the same building. I phoned them, I spoke to them, and they laughed and said, no, we sell them. So, thank you, NHS. I know that you do your very best, but that did not help me one bit in my mindset. So, yes, I've had to buy a blood pressure monitor. Maybe this is... I'm going to look at the positives. Maybe this is going to be good, because the blood pressure check will mean that I'm constantly monitoring that, trying to get it better, probably do more exercise, eat different, whatever. And then that's another concentration that takes away what's going on at work. So one of the things that happened this week then on Friday was I got the update email on regards to my appeal, and they've set a date now for the appeal as being the 12th of this month. And then what that basically does to you is, A, it's on a Friday just before the bank holiday that we're in now, and the other thing is it starts the countdown again to a hearing that I know I'm not going to be looking forward to, and then there'll be the countdown after the hearing to tell me what the outcome of that is, knowing full well there's also a separate one that they're not sure of, that in regards to a tribunal. So yeah, all of this has not been good for my mental health, and I've tried to move away and look at friends' videos and so forth, really just to take my mind off things. So I watched a number of videos on YouTube. Mainmeister had his Starcade one again, which was very funny, and his waffle had some very interesting subjects this month. I urge anybody to watch those. Panther has just turned up in a pastiche blog. I think it dropped this morning. Basically, he's in there because of the SID chip and music and his background knowledge of Commodore 64. Basically, Panther, you got a bloody great big head. You came across like a bloody idiot, and I hate you. Not really. Actually, it was. It's an hour and a half long, and it's great. You know, the one thing about it is it makes you reflect a little bit, because Panther came across very well in that video, and his background is a little bit like mine in the fact that Crazy Comets was one of those groundbreaking games that you loaded up that was not such a great game when it comes to the game itself, but the music was there, and from then on, I was loading games, into my computer just to listen to the music. It was one of those starting points. Now, the starting point for me wasn't Crazy Comets. It was a little game called Confusion, which was a puzzly type game, and it had a Rob Hubbard tune in it. And I thought, this sounds a little bit weird, different, catchy. And it had the proper music version on side B. From then on, we then got Action Biker, Thing on a Spring, Crazy Comets, Monty on the Run. The list goes on. So my starting point was a little bit different, but the same outcome. So, it's great to see that my friends have taken a hobby, turned it into something positive for them, and are now being guest presented onto shows that have got much more production values than anything I'm ever going to be involved in. And then, of course, May Meister this Tuesday has got an interview with someone from Ocean, Gary Bracey, I think it is. And he knows lots and lots of people in the industry. And the thing about this is that if you were to ask me 20 years ago, my confidence level was so high that I could talk about the Commodore 64, why a game did this, why Soundcade did this. I'd be putting in pokes and sys commands, left, right and centre, and people would think of me as being very knowledgeable, and I might be May Meister and I might be Panther, but now my brain's muddled and my nostalgia value is the only thing that keeps me looking at it, and that makes me sad. So looking back at all of my books is interesting, but it's not sticking in my brain again. It's almost like I think I've got dementia. A horrible word, and a word that I'll bring up for another part of this video, because I've been asked lots and lots of questions, and I think I'm going to move on a little bit because it just gets more and more confusing as I keep going on. So, comments that I've got on my blog from last week, from shout-outs to Down the Rabbit Hole, Robert Morrison, Cauldron of Stardust, Colin Jones, Jambon, Milfy Swimbuckle, Panther, Highlander, Mainmeister, Matroid, 8-Bit Steve. And 4 of those wanted me to answer their question in the blog. So this is why I'm having to go as quickly as I can. So let's go through this. Milfy, always great to get a comment from him. Always makes me think. He wanted to know what my favourite anthology films were post-2000, and then expanded that to be my favourite anthology films of any era. And this comes from the blog last week where I was talking about Outer Limits and Twilight Zone and so forth as anthology TV series. Now, post-2000, I don't really have a definitive list of anything yet, because I've always been somebody that sort of watches 80s, 90s films and 70s, 60s, 50s, and all of those eras much more than a film that's just come out recently. But if I was to think of anthology films post-2000, there's one called VHS, V/H/S. There are 4 films, I think, in that: VHS, VHS2, VHS Viral, and then VHS and a year. I think it's 2021. Not sure. The original VHS is an anthology horror set, and I quite liked it. Not fantastic in any way, but I liked it. One I watched a couple of years ago was called Field Guide to Evil, which is another horror anthology, only this one had 8 stories, and they were from different countries. A bit of sort of like reminiscing about Hans Christian Andersen stories and so forth, but an interesting take. Different countries makes it a little bit more interesting. Still not a cut above watching a TV anthology. And then I had to think about this one, but I think Sin City would be considered an anthology, because although it's one film, it's different characters and what happens to them in the same period of time. So that's a 2005 film, bit more comic based, but definitely a post 2000 film, and one that's not too bad. The second Sin City film, not quite so good, but of any time, that's easy. My anthology films that I watched in my teens and as a child and growing up were mostly Hammer horror films, like From Beyond the Grave, which is a lovely Peter Cushing anthology film where he owns an antique store, and anything that you bought from his store, there was repercussions. It's a bit like The Monkey's Paw. Lovely stories in there. I think there are 5. I can watch it over and over again. I've got it on Blu-ray, DVD, I've got it on all sorts. It's just one that sticks in my mind, especially the last one, which was a mirror. And it was a mirror that took a snapshot in time of somebody who had a seance and killed himself in front of the mirror. Really good. Definitely worth watching. Monster Club is just funny because that's Vincent Price, where they go into a club and they start talking about monsters. Now, it starts talking about monsters in a weird way, like what would happen if you combined a vampire with a wolf, and you'd get, and they talk about all these different names for monsters. Really, really funny. An interesting take on a horror film of its time. Brilliant. And then my 80s anthology favourite is Creepshow. I think everybody knows that Creepshow is one of my favourites. I keep harking on to just about everybody saying that if you load that game Staff of Karnath on the Commodore 64 and the loading tune comes up, right in the middle there's a picture of a castle, the tape stops, it plays a tune. That's the main theme to Creepshow. I don't know why I just keep mentioning it. It's just like it going, I bet you don't know this, I bet you don't know this, but there we go. Creepshow's great, and it's Romero and Stephen King, so it's one of those ones that came out the blue and has just enough humour in it to make it funny, in a horror genre. And the other two is obviously the Twilight Zone movie, which we've discussed about already, and Pulp Fiction, in much the same reason that Sin City is mentioned as in an anthology way. So I hope that answers your question. Now, the next one is from 8-Bit Steve. He had 2 questions. He wanted to know my thoughts on the PS5 and whether I use it a lot, and what games. That's just question 1. The answer to that very quickly is not often, when I can. And the games: Spider-Man Miles Morales, Ratchet and Clank, Astro's Playroom, and Horizon Forbidden West. They're the only games I've got on it, and it's one of those things where I have to turn it on each month just so I can buy the PlayStation Plus games of the month, and the same with my Xbox. I really would like to play it more. It's just that I'm not in the right mindset, plus things going on at work and everything else means I'm just, maybe I should, maybe I'll to make it a point that I'll do that this week. Question 2 could have a really, really complex answer, but I'm going to try and keep it simple. He wanted to know whether I like CGI or models, in regards to cinematography, possibly for science fiction films, but it could be anything. Easy, models. We talked a little bit about Star Trek, and that Enterprise model was I think it cost $1 million just to make that model. And when you think about all of the work and hours that went into that, about how it was going to be lit up, why we're lighting it up, the detail, how much of the camera is going to pick up this detail, the number of people that were creating the sets for that model to fly past. I noticed special effects very early because of Space 1999, UFO, Doctor Who and so forth, it made me sad that the BBC wouldn't put the money in, and that they could have easily have gone to someone like Jerry Anderson and made the effects better, because Jerry Anderson was a little bit of a god for me in my childhood, because just growing up and watching kids shows. So models every time. And that leads on to Panther, because he wanted to know what my memories are of Jerry Anderson. And it's funny because BritBox has done a few documentaries and published some work of Jerry Anderson's. Not only is his TV shows now being shown, there's documentaries about him, and it's brought back a lot of fond memories to me. I really got into Jerry Anderson not because of Thunderbirds, which is what everybody seems to be his favourite. My favourite was Captain Scarlett, lesser so Joe 90. I loved Stingray, which was my first introduction to Jerry Anderson, and Thunderbirds was just an hour-long okayish show in my mind, probably because it's this American accents thing. But Stingray was great. I mean, if you're a kid of like I was in 60s and 70s, and bath time was a thing, you'd take your little toys in the bath with you, you know, being 3 or 4 years old, and I used to have a Stingray submarine. So I was having great fun getting clean and doing little adventures with Troy Tempest. When it came to Captain Scarlett, I saw that, you know, obviously a little bit later, you know, still before my teens. And it's a show that I probably didn't understand why my mother let me watch it, because if you put it down on paper, we're being invaded by malevolent aliens that are only after us because we blew them up in the first place. And they grab hold, in their revenge to us, they grab hold of a military man, Captain Scarlett, kill him, and send him on a revenge trip, which fails, and the Mysterons let him go, but he comes back to life, which makes him indestructible. Well, if you think about it, every week then he dies. That's death and destruction and all sorts of things that censors these days even censor Roadrunner cartoons. So having a bloke who comes back and that sort of like a bit like a zombie is probably not good for your health as a child. But I loved it because it sort of like was a little club. They had weird words they used, like SIG, which stood for Spectrum is Green, and they had women flying planes. That's out the ballpark in regards to that era of women in the military. A little bit, should I say, not totally. And of course, diversity is in there, but it is a military show, and you know, we'll touch upon the music a little bit later on. And then we move into the live action, and of course you've got then UFO and Space 1999, because I didn't watch the puppet show Secret Service, which is another sort of cross-bridge show. And UFO was great, but I think my mother cottoned on, you shouldn't be watching this, and Space 1999 was more accessible to me. And I really loved the first season of Space 1999. Now, there is big fan contention over whether you like season 2 or whether you like season 1, because there is a big gap in years between the two shows, and the Americans wanted it rewritten for the second season for their audience. Me, I like the first season. I am totally in the ballpark of the first season. The first season to me is quintessential Space 1999. Now don't get me wrong, second season, do watch it. It's got some great episodes in it, but for me, it's the first season. And what is the glue that puts these two together? Well, there is several glues, you know, model work and all of that sort of stuff. but it's Jerry Anderson, and the last part is Barry Gray. Barry Gray being the person who did all the music to it, and I'm going to discuss that at the end, Panther. So I hope that sort of like gives you some background knowledge of me watching Jerry Anderson stuff. It goes a lot deeper than that, but I think you know where I'm coming from. And Mainmeister gave me 3 questions, and he doesn't come ask me many questions, but I speak to him all the time, so I should think it's very difficult for him to come up with questions. The first question is a fact people don't know about me. 2 is, do I believe in ghosts? And 3, do I believe in UFOs? Now, an interesting fact that people don't know about me. I think we all have programmed in us a defensive mechanism that tells us not to divulge our deepest, darkest secrets because it could come back to haunt us. But I'll give you 2, and they don't mean anything, and I don't think anybody will bat an eyelid, and it won't make a blind bit of thing in regards to why I'm doing these videos. So the first one was I was in a horror film called The Apocalypse in 2015. I was a zombie extra. I can be seen in it for exactly 2 seconds. The whole of my town was in it, and it was finally finished and out there. One to look out for. Do I believe in ghosts? No. I've got this funny feeling that ghosts are echoes of matter in time. What I mean by that is I watched lots of science fiction shows, and I don't know if you know that it's a cliche, but whenever they're doing a spaceship that's in our solar system and they're going further and further out, they pick up radio signals from the 30s and 20s and 10s and all that sort of stuff, and it's because our transmitters transmitted these radio signals on different frequencies and bands. And it seems like you can hear, if you believe the films, you can hear speeches by Malcolm X from the 60s right now if you get to Pluto. So in the same way, I think that when we die, the chance of revenge is gone. I think that matter does change, but I also think that there are snippets in time that manipulate matter, that means that you can see echoes of us. That's pretty much my thoughts on ghosts, and it isn't a very big one. So I think that whatever you're seeing is a trick on your mind, or it could be something to do with time and matter. Nothing else. None of this seeing the same clothes that you're buried in your coffin in and all that sort of stuff. And do I believe in UFOs? Yes, but not because there's photographic evidence in that. It's just that I'm one of these people that think that we can't be a fluke, that there must be other planets that are also evolving at the same time as we are, and therefore they're also developing rockets, got computers, are then starting to learn to take flights to other planets. We are not alone is what I want to end that on. Okay, and that's all the questions. My God, there was quite a few there, and we're running out of time, so I've got to be really, really quick. What came this week? Nothing much, because I'm broke, as you know, and I had to buy a blood pressure monitor. A steelbook arrived, Uncharted, based on the PlayStation set of games. It's got Tom Holland in it, Mark Wahlberg. It's one I haven't seen. I will be watching it this bank holiday. I went into town and I saw this box set of The Game, which has got a book and a load of extras. It's a David Fincher film. It's a film he did after Seven. That's why I'm mentioning it now. Deluxe packaging, bloody heavy. I don't know when I'll get round to seeing this again. The Game was one of those films that nowhere near as good as 7 in my opinion, but David Fincher got a bad rap for Alien 3, didn't he? Or so even though I still think Alien 3 is not a bad film. Then we usually talk about Laserdiscs. Now I'll have to go very, very quickly through this, because these were just interesting little bits that came out from me. I mentioned what my first Laserdisc was, and it was Star Trek The Undiscovered Country widescreen edition, which dates that. One of the earliest that I got was already mentioned just now, Creep Show, and the reason that one was interesting was you got the comic book with it, and that's the comic book that you see all the way through the film. It keeps blowing from dust cans and everything. If you go and watch the film, it's an anthology film, brilliant. Laserdiscs introduced me to a lot of longer versions of films. One of them is Leon, or The Professional. This one, as you can see, is the French edition. It's a lovely gate-folded edition. And it is I think the 12-minute longer version. I was very, very into Luc Besson, and I still think his films are great, but I don't like some of his most modern new stuff. I mentioned last week, this is Doubtfire, this is the box, that's what you got for 80 quid. You can see on the back, just so that you can freeze frame that, because you can see what sort of extras came along with these things. A couple of things I liked about this was the bloopers. They also showed the cartoon and how it was made, because there's a cartoon right at the beginning that Roger Williams is voicing. And then the very, very big reason why I bought Laserdiscs, which is mostly Criterion collections and ancient films like Some Like It Hot. Criterion is a name that you saw last week with 7. They're mostly tried to preserve films as best as possible. This collection gives you the sort of extras that a film historian would like. So you've got the film soundtrack on the digital tracks. On the analog track, you've got just the film score, and on analog track 2, you've got an audio essay by Howard Suber, and then you've got things like still stepped the script, and you know, it's just basically a collector's dream if you want to know how films are made. So the books that came this week were 2 omnibuses called What If. I won't go too much into this, but these 2 books together make up the whole of volume 1. What If is something that I loved as a kid. I was a child reading superhero stories. What If was a set of stories that didn't have story arcs, but they explained what would happen if something else occurred. So there are splits in time, splits in the universe, where you should turn left, should turn right, go straight on. A particular story could be, what if Rick Jones had been hit by the gamma bomb instead of Bruce Banner, who turned into the Hulk? What if somebody else got bitten by a radioactive spider? What if somebody else had the Hammer of Thor? What, you know, etc, etc, etc. I love what if stories, because I'm always thinking to myself, what if I was rich? No, it's not going to happen. Anyway, and we get on to the last part. Soundtracks, my favourite bit, really. I've been listening mostly to Lalo Schifrin this week. I brought up this Dirty Harry one, although I've got many other Lalo Schifrin scores. Ones that you probably would know would be Enter the Dragon. Very much a sort of like a jazzy musician that involves orchestra. I can't recommend Dirty Harry enough, purely because it's got themes, and there is a theme for Scorpio being the killer, because it's called the Scorpio Killings. I really want Panther to listen to the Scorpio tracks, because there is a filtered electric guitar which I think you'd get a big buzz out of. It's the type of guitar that I like to listen to the most. So that ends that. And of course, Panther asked the question about Jerry Anderson, and Jerry Anderson can't be talked about unless you start talking about Barry Gray, and of course Space 1999, Captain Scarlett, and many others. Barry Gray, what can I talk about him? I suppose the sad news about Barry Gray, not only is it because he's dead, but most of the stuff he did was adverts, a couple of films, and mostly Jerry Anderson productions. And most Jerry Anderson productions are military based, so they've got a very high amount of drums that are in it. But when it came to Captain Scarlett scared you. It has scary moments in it. If you think about it, the Mysterons are seen by two green lights that go over you and turn you back into a living zombie. And all the time that's happening, the Mysteron's theme is 4 notes. Just 4 notes, which just goes up in a scale. But it's done on an organ, and it's eerie, and it makes you feel awkward. And that's different to the military side of things, which is what Captain Scarlett is, and all of the music that you hear for the rest of the episode. Space 1999 follows a similar theme, but Space 1999 had this lovely introduction where it's a big fanfare, and then you see an Eagle spaceship spinning around, and suddenly it comes into this big electric guitar section. You know, it's absolutely stunning, and then goes into an orchestra again. It's those sort of things, those moments, those themes, those differences that make me listen to soundtracks more. And if you want to know, yes, you can get Space 1999 on Blu-ray, the whole 2 seasons. And that about covers it. I'm sorry it's a rush. I'm sorry for a lot of things in regards to my demeanour, whether I should be smiling and so forth. I really do need to look after myself better, get a shave and so forth. I'm not in a particularly good way today. Tomorrow I'll be reflecting on this and turning my life around and resetting myself. That's what I do. Every day I wake up and I go, I'm alive. Stop getting into these doldrums. So, you guys are helping me no end. Keep those comments coming in. Just as a PS, I did do a second video blog last week. I got 2 comments, not many views. But it's an aspect of my collecting that I wanted people to see. It was an experiment. I might do something like that again, but it's the comments that tell me whether it was, you know, worth doing maybe something else. But remember, I'm doing this for family as well, so I'm in 2 minds, but I don't know whether anybody really liked it or not. Nobody thumbed it up too much, nobody commented on it too much. But it's a subject that might not interest people. But I'd like to know whether it was okay to view. Was the camera angles okay? Did I sound okay on it? But neither here nor there. Thank you just so much, friend. You are all my friends, and I do love your comments. So keep them coming in, and thank you very much. And bye bye.